I never thought the place I called home would become the reason my whole life cracked open. Not my marriage, not my health, not even money. It was the house, the one thing I believed nobody could touch. I am sitting here now telling this story because if I do not, then I feel like I might disappear under the weight of it. And maybe someone listening right now needs to hear that trusting the wrong people can cost you everything. Let me rewind. Way back before lawyers, before courtrooms, before I learned how ugly betrayal really looks. That house was not fancy. No gated driveway, no marble floors. But it was mine. I bought it 32 years ago, back when my knees did not ache and my hair still had color. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I skipped vacations. I packed leftovers instead of eating out. And every single dollar I saved went into that place. I raised my kids there. I buried my husband from that house. I learned how to live alone in those walls. People say a house is just wood and nails. That's a lie. A house holds your grief, your memories, your voice bouncing down the hallway when you call out for someone who is no longer there. After my husband passed, I stayed. Everyone told me to downsize, move closer to the kids, but that house was my anchor. My son Mark and my daughter Lisa started showing up more after that. At first, it felt comforting. They brought groceries, fixed little things, sat at the table, and talked about nothing. I thought, maybe this is what family looks like after loss. Then my health started slipping. Nothing dramatic, just age doing its thing, doctor's appointments, medications, slower mornings. That's when they started saying it, just casually, like it was no big deal. Mom, maybe we should help you manage things. Mom, it might be time to let us take care of paperwork. Mom, you shouldn't stress about bills. I trusted them. Why would I not? They were my kids. I carried them. I fed them. I stayed up all night when they were sick. I let them look through my mail, help with online banking, talk to insurance people. One day, Mark mentioned something called a living trust. He said it would protect me, protect the house, protect everything. He said, Mom, this just makes things easier. If something happens, we can help without courts getting involved. I asked him straight, does this mean I lose my house? He laughed. Mom, no, you live here until the day you die. Nothing changes. That sentence, nothing changes, that's the one that still echoes in my head. They brought papers, a lot of them, thick stack, legal words, small print. I told them I wanted to read everything. Lisa smiled and said, Mom, it's standard stuff. You trust us, right? I signed. I wish I could say I felt something was wrong, a chill, a warning, anything. But I felt relief, like I had passed the heavy stuff to people who loved me. For months, nothing changed. Life went on. I watered my plants, sat on the porch, watched the neighborhood kids ride bikes. Then little things started feeling off. Mail stopped coming. Utility bills were already paid before I saw them. Property tax letters never showed up. When I asked, Mark said, we switched everything to paperless, less clutter for you. I nodded because I trusted him. Then, one afternoon, a man knocked on my door. Suit, clipboard, no smile. He asked my name. I told him. He asked if I was aware the property was sold. I laughed. I actually laughed because it sounded insane. I said, you must have the wrong address. He shook his head, said the sale closed weeks ago, said the new owner would be stopping by soon. My ears started ringing. I told him, I own this house. I've lived here for over 30 years. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd stepped into something he didn't want to be part of. He handed me a card, told me to call the number. When the door closed, I stood there, my hand still on the knob. The walls felt different, like they were no longer holding me up. I called Mark, no answer. I called Lisa, straight to voicemail. I sat down on the floor. That night, they finally came over, both of them. Serious faces, no eye contact. Mark said, "Mom, you're getting upset over a misunderstanding." I asked, "Did you sell my house?" Silence. Lisa said, "We had to. It was the smartest move." My chest felt like it was collapsing. They said the market was hot, that the equity should not go to waste, that I would be moving anyway. I said, "Moving where?" Mark said, "We'll figure that out." That's when it hit me. They didn't just sell my house, they erased me from it. I told them they couldn't do this, that it was illegal, that I never agreed. Lisa said, "You signed the papers." I said, "You said nothing would change." Mark looked away and said, "Mom, things change." That was the moment. I realized I was no longer their mother. I was a problem to be managed. That night, I slept in my clothes because I was scared, not from them, but from losing the only place that knew who I was. And I had no idea that what they did would soon land all of us in a courtroom in front of a judge who would react in a way none of us expected. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound felt louder. The clock ticking, the fridge humming, the house creaking like it was whispering goodbye. Morning came too fast. I made coffee out of habit, then remembered I might not even belong there anymore. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger. I sat at the kitchen table and replayed every conversation I had with my kids, every smile, every reassuring word. I pulled out the folder where I kept important papers, birth certificates, insurance, old tax returns. The trust documents were there, thick, complicated, with language I never would have understood on my own. I started reading, slow, line by line. That's when I saw it, a sentence buried deep inside, saying the trustee had full authority to sell the property. The trustee, Mark. My chest tightened. I remembered asking him directly if I would lose my house, and him laughing, saying nothing would change. I felt sick. I called the number on the card the man left. It belonged to the real estate office. The agent sounded cheerful until I told her who I was. Then her voice changed. She said the sale was legal. The trust allowed it. The buyers were already preparing paperwork for possession. I asked her where I was supposed to go. She paused, then said, "That would be between you and your family." That word, family. It cut deeper than anything else. I called a lawyer next, one my neighbor recommended, an older guy with a calm voice. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I need to see the documents, and I need to see them now." I took a cab to his office, holding the folder like it might fall apart in my hands. He read everything, flipped pages, made notes. Then he leaned back and sighed. He said, "You were manipulated, plain and simple." My eyes filled up, not because he said it, but because someone finally believed me. He explained that while the sale followed the trust rules, there were serious questions about undue influence, about capacity, about whether I fully understood what I signed. He asked, "Did they pressure you?" I laughed bitterly. Pressure? No. They wrapped it in love. They used trust. They used my grief. He nodded, said that happens more than people think. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "The buyers could try to evict you." That word, evict. 32 years, and suddenly I was a guest in my own life. I went home and waited. Every knock felt like the end. Every car slowing down felt like the end. Mark texted me that evening, said we needed to talk like adults. I replied, "You already made your decision without me." Lisa came over alone the next day. She looked tired, but not sorry. She said, "Mom, you're overreacting. You'll get money from the sale." I said, "I didn't want the money." She said, "You don't understand finances." That was the moment I saw her clearly. Not my little girl, but someone who saw me as an obstacle. I told her I hired a lawyer. Her face changed. Fear flickered just for a second. She said, "You can't do that. It'll tear the family apart." I said, "You already did that." She left without another word. Days passed, then weeks.
Legal letters started arriving, certified mail, official language, deadlines. The buyers filed for possession. My lawyer filed a motion to block it. And then, the worst part, I learned the sale price. They sold the house way under market value. That's when my lawyer looked at me and said, "This just got serious." Then he explained that selling below value could indicate self-dealing, fraud, abuse of power. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than fear. I felt resolve. I told him, "I want to fight." He nodded and said, "Then we take this to court." The court date was set, weeks away, but the tension filled every hour. Mark stopped calling. Lisa blocked me. Neighbors started whispering. Moving trucks drove by slowly. At night, I walked through each room, touching the walls, the door frames, the spot where my husband used to stand. I whispered, "I am not done yet." I had no idea that when we finally stood before a judge, what they had done would shock the entire courtroom. The weeks before court felt longer than the years I had lived in that house. The time stretched in strange ways. Some days crawled, others disappeared completely. My lawyer prepared me for what was coming. He said court was not about emotion, it was about facts, paper trails, patterns. Still, he told me to be ready, because when family is involved, things can get ugly. We met several times, going over documents, emails, bank statements. That is when another truth surfaced. The money from the sale, it never touched my account. The proceeds went into an account controlled by the trust, which meant controlled by Mark. My lawyer asked, "Did they give you anything?" I shook my head. No. No check, no explanation, just silence. He said, "That helps your case." It did not feel like help. It felt like proof that I had been erased. The night before court, I barely slept. I laid in my bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. I wondered if this was my last night there. In the morning, I dressed carefully, not fancy, not broken, just clean and steady. I wanted to look like myself, not the version they painted as confused or incapable. My lawyer met me outside the courthouse. Tall building, cold steps, people rushing everywhere. Inside, the air felt heavy, like everyone was carrying secrets. Mark and Lisa were already there, sitting together, talking quietly. They did not look at me. That hurt more than anger ever could. Their lawyer approached mine. They shook hands, smiles tight, professional. We took our seats. When the judge entered, everyone stood. He was older, sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of man who had seen every excuse imaginable. The hearing began. Their lawyer spoke first, said the trust was legal, the sale was lawful, that I had signed willingly. He described me as elderly, fragile, confused. I clenched my hands. Then my lawyer stood. He spoke slowly, clearly, methodically. He explained the timeline, the pressure, the lack of disclosure. He pointed out that the sale price was far below market value, that the buyer had personal connections. The judge leaned forward. Then came the moment that changed everything. My lawyer asked to introduce evidence, emails, text messages. The judge nodded. One message appeared on the screen, from Mark to a friend. It said, "Once the house is sold, she will have no choice but to move." The room went silent. Another message, from Lisa. "She will be mad, but she will get over it." The judge looked up. His eyes moved from the screen to Mark. He asked, "Did you write this?" Mark hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "Yes," he said. The judge asked, "Were you acting in your mother's best interest?" Mark said, "We believed we were." The judge leaned back, folded his hands. Then he said something I will never forget. Belief does not replace duty. The courtroom shifted, like the air itself had changed. He asked Lisa if she understood the terms of the trust. She said yes. He asked, "Did your mother?" She did not answer. My lawyer stood again and asked permission for me to speak. The judge nodded. I stood, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. I told him about the house, about my husband, about asking directly if I would lose it. I told him how they laughed, how they said nothing would change. The judge watched me closely, not impatient, not distracted. When I finished, there was another pause. He asked Mark, "Did you ever explain to your mother that signing meant you could sell her home without her consent?" Mark swallowed and said, "No." That was it. The judge closed his folder, looked directly at them, and said, "This court takes abuse of trust very seriously." He ordered an immediate halt to any eviction, a temporary injunction. The buyer's attorney shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. The judge scheduled a full hearing, subpoenas, financial review, witnesses. And then he said the words that made my knees almost give out. "I am deeply concerned with what I'm seeing." Mark looked stunned. Lisa started crying. For the first time since this began, I felt seen. As we left the courtroom, my lawyer leaned in and whispered, "This judge is not amused." But the fight was not over, not even close, because what would come out next would shock everyone, including the people who thought they had already won.
The days leading up to the full hearing felt heavier than before, because now everyone knew this was not a misunderstanding. It was exposure. Subpoenas went out, bank records, emails, call logs. Every move they made was about to be laid bare. Mark finally tried to call me. I let it ring. Lisa sent a message, said, "We never meant to hurt you." I did not respond. This time, I was not protecting them. I was protecting myself. The courtroom was fuller the second time. Observers, clerks, even a few people I did not recognize. The judge entered. Same calm presence, same sharp eyes. He wasted no time. He started with the finances. The trust account statements were projected on the screen. Deposits, transfers, withdrawals, large ones. My lawyer pointed to a transaction. Money moved from the trust into an LLC. An LLC Mark had opened 6 months earlier. The judge raised his eyebrow. Mark tried to explain, said it was an investment, temporary, strategic. The judge stopped him. He said, "You do not invest your mother's home equity without her informed consent." Then came the sale details. The buyer representative testified, under oath. They admitted they knew the seller was acting as trustee. They admitted they never spoke to me. The judge asked, "Did it concern you that the homeowner was still living there?" The man hesitated, then said, "We assumed arrangements had been made." The judge leaned forward. "Assumptions are not protections." Then he turned to Lisa. He asked her why she supported the sale. She said, "We were worried about Mom's health, about her future care." The judge asked, "Did you consult a doctor?" Lisa said, "No." "Did you consult a social worker?" "No." "Did you consult your mother?" She looked down. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge did something unexpected. He asked me a question directly. "Do you want to stay in your home?" I answered without hesitation, "Yes." He nodded, then turned back to them and said, "That is all the court needed to hear." He explained that fiduciary duty meant loyalty, honesty, full disclosure. He said, "This court is deeply troubled." Those words again.
He ruled that the sale was subject to reversal pending full review, that the funds would be frozen immediately, that Mark would be removed as trustee effective immediately. Lisa gasped. Mark looked like he had been punched. The judge then appointed an independent trustee, someone neutral, someone with no personal stake. He ordered a forensic audit, every dollar traced. And then came the line that shocked everyone in that room. He said, "I am referring this matter for potential elder financial abuse investigation." You could feel it. The air sucked out of the space. Mark tried to speak. The judge raised his hand. "No," he said, "you have spoken enough." I sat there, hands trembling, heart pounding, not from fear, from disbelief. For months I had felt invisible, dismissed, small, and now the truth was louder than all of them. As we stood to leave, the judge looked at me one last time. He said, "You did the right thing by coming here." Outside the courthouse, the sky looked different. Later, my lawyer smiled, said, "This is not over, but you are standing on solid ground now." I went back to the house, my house. I sat in the living room, listening to the familiar sounds. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. But what came next, the final decision, the consequences, that would change my family forever. The waiting after court was almost harder than the fight itself, because now everything was out in the open, and there was no going back. Weeks passed while the audit moved forward, account by account, transfer by transfer. The independent trustee kept me informed, clear explanations, no pressure, no confusion. For the first time since my husband died, I felt like someone was actually on my side. Then the report came in. The money from the sale, most of it had already been spent. Investments that failed, personal expenses, things that had nothing to do with my care. When my lawyer read the findings to me, I closed my eyes, not because I was shocked, but because deep down, I already knew. The final hearing arrived, the courtroom quieter this time, heavier. Mark and Lisa sat apart. They did not look at me. The judge entered. Same calm, same steady presence. He spoke slowly, every word measured. He ruled the sale invalid. The property was ordered returned to my name. The buyers were refunded from remaining trust funds, and the trust itself was dissolved. Then came the consequences. Mark was barred from acting as a fiduciary, not just for me, but for anyone, for a long time. The judge ordered restitution, every dollar accounted for, every loss addressed. As for Lisa, he said her involvement showed complicity and that ignorance was not an excuse. He looked at both of them and said, "Family does not give you permission to exploit." No one spoke. I felt something release inside me, not joy, not victory, relief. After court, they didn't follow me. No apologies, no explanations. I went home, unlocked my door, and stood there for a long moment. The house felt the same, but I was different. I changed the locks, updated my will, named people who had earned my trust. I learned something painful but powerful. Love does not excuse control. Trust must be protected, even from family, sometimes especially from family. I still think about my children. I miss who I thought they were, but I no longer blame myself. Because standing up for yourself is not betrayal, it's survival. If you're listening to this and something feels off, trust that feeling. Ask questions, get help, speak up, because your life, your home, your dignity, they matter. And no one, not even blood, has the right to take them from you.